Well, you decided to use text in your thumbnail, and you've come to the right place because here I'll focus everything you need to know about text and thumbnails, to the number of words, the size, and how do you contrast with the background. So first of all, I'd like to talk about font, because that's the first thing you choose. It really depends on your brand. I wouldn't mix fonts for every thumbnail, because then your viewers don't know what to expect from you, and your brand just becomes a little bit confusing. I would choose a font that's clear, easy to read, even from afar, because you have to understand that when we edit thumbnails, they become really small when you actually see them. So they have to be really easy to read. Otherwise, if you cannot read them, what's the point of the text? In my case, I always use Helvetica Bold because I just like the aesthetic of it. It's easy to read, it's clean. It makes it really clear what to focus your eyes on when you put that in the thumbnail. But that's just my personal choice. You can use any other font. There are probably other fonts that are more aesthetic. It really is up to personal preference. Just make sure it's easy to read. And the second point I want to focus on is the number of words. Some people use too many words on the thumbnail. It's not supposed to be a paragraph or too much information. You want to talk about this, oh, this is the best thing, or something like that. You really have to narrow it down. I would say 5 words max, because you spark the attention of the viewer. But if it's just too many letters, the viewer is just not going to read all of them. It's going to be confusing, and anything that's uncertain, you just give up. You continue on to go on to the next video. So that's why 3, 5 words are an optimal amount of words, maybe 1, 2 if you can. Try and reduce to the maximum. You know, rules are meant to be broken. You can use more, but it just becomes a little bit too long. For example, all of these prices, I just put the prices. The price is really easy to understand. You look at it, immediately you know what it means. For the rental friend thumbnail, I could have put, oh, rental friend, and then price, but I thought it would be too much. Already the price per hour tells me enough what I need to know, or what the viewer needs to know about the video, along with the title. Describing anything else would have been too much information. So the key point is trying to reduce the information to the maximum what you really need. Because if you give too much information, it becomes A, redundant, and B, a little bit boring. And the last point that's the most important for a text is actually how much contrast there is between your text and the background. Because if you have a bright background and you add a text that's also white, it becomes really hard to read. Or these funky colors that you have, maybe a blue background and add like a light blue color. You don't want to use that. You usually want something that really pops out, really contrasts well with what is in the background. Sometimes the background matches well with where you position your text. In this case, in the London video, there was a bit of shade from the building itself, and it matched really well where I could put the 0.00 pounds. And the white text and the darker background really contrasted well and made it really easy to read. Now, the same series, the 0.00 money. In Tokyo, it didn't work as well because the background already was pretty bright. I tried a black text, but it didn't really work out very well. It became a bit too confusing. I couldn't read it. So the trick was to make the background slightly darker. To do this, at least in Photoshop, you have a layer of just black and then you turn the opacity way down. So it becomes really transparent, but slightly transparent so that you see this darkening effect. This effect is enough to make my text really pop out and make it easy to really read. A trick I always like to do when I do my thumbnails, because when you're editing your thumbnails in the computer, you have such a big screen and you're so used to the big screen, that's when you work on. Sometimes from time to time, it's very useful to zoom your picture all the way out to make it as big as you would see the thumbnail. And that's how you really determine the size of the font you want to use. Sometimes you have the text it seems way too big when you're working on it, but then when you reduce in size, it feels just right. And that's what you have to work on. Most people watch videos on phones or on laptops. They don't really see these pictures big, up close and personal. So you really have to reduce it from time to time to give yourself that information and see if it works well at that image size. So when you reduce it, you see if the font is too small or too big. You see also clear as day if the font is easy to read or not, if it has enough contrast or not. And there's one last trick I'd like to share with you. So the previous trick was to darken the places you want it to be dark and make stuff pop out, like the text and me in this case. But sometimes you don't want to do that. And in that case, the other way I would use is a drop shadow. A drop shadow is something that's really common, and it's literally just the shadow of the text. This shadow is enough to give a clean look while also making it clear to read. So I could use a white text in a white background with a drop shadow. It's clean, it looks nice, and you can still read it. That's in the case if you don't want to manipulate the picture that much. You just have to change the text so that it becomes a little bit more readable. And to really review, the text has to be easy to read. The information has to be minimal. Just the things you need, not too much. I would say 5 words max. And it has to be clear in size. Make sure you reduce the image from time to time to see how it looks actually, how the viewer will actually look at your thumbnail, and see if it's readable, the size, and make sure the contrast between the text and the background is enough to make it really pop out and really easy to read. And again, everything we're trying to do, the quality, the color, the composition, the text, everything we're trying to manipulate it as much as possible to make the photo and the thumbnail as clear as possible. When we really just look at for a millisecond, we understand what it means. That's what's really all about. And text is just one of the things. And with that said, we'll go on to the next lesson where we'll cover the importance of consistency and a bit of branding. I'll see you there.